Hi, I'm Ashley and welcome to my channel. And in today's video, I have another reading vlog for you, and this is one that I'm super excited for because I'm going to be reading this book, Where the Dark Stands Still. The premise of this book just sounds so promising, and I love the fact that it takes place in a magical forest because that probably means it's going to be cozy and whimsical, and just looking at this cover, which is gorgeous, is giving me cozy and whimsical vibes. And of course there is going to be a romance between our main character and our magical being, and I can't wait to read about that. So I'm gonna go start reading this now, and I'll be back in a little bit with my first thoughts. I love this line right here. She says, "Well," she says, flustered, "if you're not here to help, then I suppose you're here to eat me. Best get on with it then." She just encountered trees with human eyes, and the human eyes are weeping yellow sap. That explains the eyes on the trees on the cover. Hi, so I'm back with a reading update. I have made it to page 58, chapter 7. And so far, I am really enjoying this. But before I talk more about my thoughts, I just want to go over what this book is about. So our story follows Liska, and the book starts off with her going into these woods at nighttime, known as the Spirit Wood. And no one goes into these woods, and everyone stays away from them because it's said that demons live in these woods, so they're very dangerous. But she is going into them because she is determined to find this mythical flower called the Fern Flower. And it is said that whoever finds this flower, it will grant them one wish, and she wants to use this wish to get rid of her magic. And in her world, magic is viewed as evil, and recently Liska's magic caused a horrible thing to happen. So now she is desperate to get rid of her magic. She doesn't want anything to do with it anymore. She just wants to live a normal life as a normal girl. And so she goes into these woods, and she ends up coming upon a white stag, and this white stag shows her where the flower is. But as she's about to make her wish, the stag turns into a half man, and she realizes the stag was actually Leslie all along. And the Leslie is a demon that oversees and protects the Spirit Wood. And he tells her that he cannot let her have the fern flower. But to humor himself, he asks her what her wish is, and she tells him that is to get rid of her magic. And he is intrigued by this because he doesn't really understand why she want to give up her magic, and so he offers her a deal. And he says that if she will serve him for a year, after that year is up, he will grant her wish and she can go free. And so Liska doesn't really want to accept his deal because she knows that she can't trust demons. But at the same time, she doesn't really have another option, and she wants to get rid of her magic so badly that she agrees to his deal. And so then she goes to live with him in his manor in the middle of the woods, and our story goes from there. And so far, I'm really loving the magical atmosphere of this book. It's cozy and fairy tale-like, but also kind of dark and sinister at the same time. For example, the forest, it's mentioned how the forest is beautiful, but in a dark and deadly way. And overall, the way the forest is described, it reminds me a lot of the forest from Snow White, which that forest used to scare me as a child, especially because of the trees having faces. And in this book, there is a point where the trees suddenly have faces and they are weeping tears of sap, which is really eerie and unsettling, but also kind of cool at the same time. And I think also that the writing style also adds very much to this whimsical, dark, fairy tale atmosphere. And I'm just gonna read a couple lines describing the forest from the book to give you a sense of the writing style. So on page 5 it says, "In a windless dark shuttered from the world, a tree is not a tree, but a disfigured body with crooked limbs. Its bark not bark, but a grotesque face with cracking skin. The brambles beneath, not brambles at all, but wicked talons snatching and tearing at clothes." And that's just one instance of the writing style, but I love the lyrical nature of it and how it's definitely adding to the fairy tale-like feel of the book. And then kind of to contrast that dark feeling, I'm going to read another line about Lishka's magic and how it's described, because that one comes across more as whimsical and more on the bright fairy tale side rather than the dark fairy tale side. So on page 12 of the book, Lishka's magic is described as, "It shatters through her skin in a bloom of blinding light, taking its usual shape, butterflies, a cloud of them whirling and erratic," which I think that is so neat that her magic is described as taking on the form of butterflies. It almost gives like her magic like a cozy, benign feeling, even though so far she has described it in the book as being erratic and kind of malicious. And also the whole whimsical, magical atmosphere of this one reminds me a little bit of the whimsical, magical atmosphere in Once Upon a Broken Heart. Although this is definitely darker and this is more lighthearted, more on the less dark side. At least the beginning of the story is. Speaking of Once Upon a Broken Heart, Lishka does remind me a little bit of Evangeline. And so Lishka, we don't really know her age. It just says that she's of age. So she could be 17, 18, 19. I don't really know, but somewhere around there. But she, like Evangeline, is also making a desperate bargain with someone that she knows she probably shouldn't trust, but she, like Evangeline, is desperate that her wish come true. So she makes a deal with this dubious character. We'll say, though, that Lishka is definitely more down-to-earth and has more of a realistic view of the world than Evangeline, who kind of sees the world through rose-colored glasses, especially at the beginning of that series. And in a way, Lishka also reminds me of Chise from the manga The Ancient Manga's Bride, because like Chise, Lishka can also see magical creatures that others cannot. And this ability has made her life more difficult, and she, like Chise, resents her magical powers for making her life difficult and just wants to get rid of them. And Lishka, I also feel, is that kind of character that so far she seems to be lacking confidence and self-worth, and that reminds me a little bit of Sophie from Howl's Moving Castle. Speaking of Howl's Moving Castle, our next prominent character in this book, the Leshy, reminds me a lot of Howl, in the fact that they are both kind of arrogant and they both have magical abilities. But at the same time, Valesky seems more on the awkward side, because it seems like at times that he doesn't really know how to interact with Lishka. And also Valesky gives Lishka the nickname of Little Fox and Not So Clever Fox, and I just thought that was endearing and also reminded me of Once Upon a Broken Heart. And his character so far is very intriguing because he, for whatever reason, seems interested and almost really invested in Lishka learning how to use her magic. And that's made me wondering why he's so invested in that. And besides that, other intriguing things have been happening in the story and plot that just make me want to keep reading. For example, there is this creature that is half corpse, half hound that just mysteriously appears in front of Lishka randomly at times, and he is really menacing because he has super dark black fur and glowing eyes, and he'll just show up and then randomly vanish. And the last time he made an appearance before vanishing, he growled, "He wakes," so I'm like, what does that mean? Who's waking up? And then to add to that, another curious thing that has happened several times is this door just randomly appears out of thin air in front of Lishka. And she hasn't had a chance to open it yet to see where it leads, because soon after it appears, the Leshy always shows up, and it's like the door is afraid of the Leshy and it disappears. And at one point, the Leshy makes a remark that like, "Oh, like, now after all these years, you're finally waking up and trying to make trouble? I don't think so." And it's like, is the thing that he's referring to waking up the same thing that the Hound was referring to? I don't know, but I'm gonna read more so I can find out. And so those are all my thoughts so far. I am really enjoying this book and I can't wait to read more. But now, unfortunately, I have to take a reading break and go do some chores because they won't do themselves. And then after I do that, I am going to do a little bookish arts and craft because I got these diamond bookmarks that I want to make. And I've never done diamond painting before, so it'll be interesting to see how that goes. And I also might download the audiobook to this as well. So I'm going to go do those things, and I'll be back with another update when I have more thoughts. Hi, so it's the next day and I am back with a reading update because I am more than halfway through this book now. So I am on page 227, chapter 25. And I did make my diamond bookmark. I started it yesterday and finished it this morning. It's just so pretty. And this was just so relaxing to do. So I definitely recommend this if you're looking for an easy, calming craft that doesn't really take that long. And while working on the bookmark, I did listen to the audiobook and I do recommend it because I really like the narrator for it. And I did realize, though, when I started listening to the audiobook that I've been saying the Demon of the Woods' name wrong this entire time. So I apologize for that. I did try looking it up before I recorded my first thoughts yesterday. But apparently what I looked up was completely wrong. And even though I have heard how it's been said in the audiobook, I might still say it wrong. So I apologize. Please forgive me if I continue to butcher the name. But I will try my best. So I am loving this book. It is already 5 stars for me. I'm loving everything about it. Our main characters, Liska and Lesha, already have my heart. I really love that Liska is brave and courageous without being overbearing. She knows when to pick her battles. She knows when it's appropriate to be stubborn and when it's not. And I really appreciate that because I hate when characters are just stubborn for the sake of being stubborn. That drives me crazy. And I've really enjoyed learning more about the Lesha and his mysterious past. And I really love just seeing the interactions between these two and seeing them slowly warm up to each other. And you see how they go from being awkward and wary around each other to being friendly and teasing. And that is just a lot of fun to read about. And I've just loved seeing how their relationship is progressing. There also have been some flickers of romance between them. So it's definitely a slow burn. Because they're both oh, I should not have feelings for this other person. Because for Liska, she's always been told demons are bad. So she's oh, I can't have these feelings for the demon because it goes against everything that she's been taught her entire life. And Lesha also has his own things that he's dealing with, and he has his own reasons why he's fighting this attraction. But at the end of the last chapter that I just read, chapter 24, there is a really cute and sweet moment between these two, and it just made my heart melt. And in addition to our 2 main characters, there are also some really compelling and endearing side characters as well. One of them is this house spirit that Liska befriends that often takes on the form of a cat. And then the other is the house itself, because the house has a soul. So it'll just light lamps when it wants to, and it'll also show doorways to Liska that lead to mysterious rooms. And also at the beginning, there's a scene where Liska is talking about the dust and how the dust kind of swirls around her and is following after her and playing around her feet, and that very much reminded me of the soot sprites from the Studio Ghibli films. And really, this whole book is feeling very much like a Studio Ghibli film, and especially like Howl's Moving Castle, which I'm loving. And also, along with the Studio Ghibli vibes, the fairy tale vibes in this book have also been very strong as well. And one of the things about this book that has made it feel more fairy tale-like is the chapters actually have chapter titles. And I feel like that is rare nowadays, and the titles themselves just very much read like a fairy tale. For example, some of the titles are A Not So Clever Fox, The House Under the Rowan Tree, and The Manor with a Soul, which all those just feel very fairy tale-like and whimsical. Yeah, those are all my thoughts at the moment about this book. Like I said, I'm loving it, and something really bad would have to happen for me not to love this book and for it not to be a 5-star. Which I guess could still happen, but I really hope it doesn't because I want to love this. And so now I'm gonna go listen to more of the audiobook and make some cinnamon rolls. Oh my gosh, chapter 32's title is In Which Liska Sets the Leshy on Fire. Ah. Hi, so I am back and it is the next day and I have finished Where the Dark Stands Still. So I am here with my final thoughts and I loved this book. There was a scene near the end that almost made me cry, and something did happen that I kind of wish didn't happen, but I can see why it happened and it makes sense in the logic of the story. And speaking of the end of the book, near the end of the story we do get some scenes from the Leshy's point of view. And I really liked that because we got to see his exact thoughts about Lishka and about his certain reactions to certain scenes. And I feel like when you get scenes directly from a character's perspective, it just hits harder emotionally. So I really appreciated that those scenes were in here. And speaking of that, if you have the Barnes & Noble edition of this book, there's actually an extra bonus chapter called A Witch in a Wardrobe and a Demon in a Thicket. This extra bonus chapter is from the Leshy's point of view, and it's just a cute little story with him and Lishka going on like a little adventure in the woods. I don't think I mentioned this yet, but this book is a standalone, so it wraps things up really well, and there is an epilogue at the end that I really liked and I thought was well done. The epilogue flash forwards a little bit into the future, and you get to see how things have come full circle, and the epilogue still carries the same like whimsical fairy tale vibes that the whole book did, but the fairy tale vibes in the ending are less dark and they seem more positive and hopeful. I pretty much loved everything about this book. I love the setting of the magical woods and how they felt so whimsical and fairy tale like, and I also loved the writing in this book as well. It was definitely on the lyrical side, and it also very much contributed to the fairy tale like feel of this book, and I just loved how the author described things. And then last but not least, I love the characters in this book. There is definitely the found family trope in this book, and that just made parts of this book feel so wholesome. Like, all these characters, Lishka, the Lesha, and the other characters, kind of a little lost in life, but then they all come together in this manor in the woods, and they finally find a place to call home and people that understand them. It is just so wholesome and heartwarming. And one other thing that I want to mention is that when I was reading through the acknowledgements, because usually I either read or skim through the acknowledgements in every book because I'm curious, I found that this author is actually a fan of the novel Howl's Moving Castle, and I was like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense, because throughout this whole book I was getting Howl's Moving Castle vibes. So I'm like, okay, I'm not imagining things. I just thought that was like a really cool tidbit to learn at the end. And so I would definitely recommend this book if you are a fan of Howl's Moving Castle or just Ghibli films in general. And I'd also recommend this if you love fairy tale books with dark and whimsical vibes. But yeah, that's everything I have to say about this book. If you made it to this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. And until next time, bye!